to Geared for Growth. I'm your host, Mike Mortlock, Managing Director of MCG Quantity Surveyors. And today it's episode 2 with Manoj Abichandani from trustee.com.au, where we continue the conversation about how he's built his property portfolio inside super and his tips for using superannuation, or self-managed superannuation, I should say, as an effective tax vehicle to build your wealth and your portfolio. Here's Manoj. Admittedly, you your money wasn't handed to you. You had to graft. You were washing dishes, but presumably, you had a very successful practice. But you would have had to start with that first property, which I'm guessing would be a high yielding residential, and then you moved into commercial. How did you get from the first property to such a large fund?
Yeah, Mike, it's a very interesting story. I used to live in a suburb called Dundas, and Meriton had actually built 300 townhouses and villas, and my kids were really young. And this was pre-year 2000 when we had the Y2K problem. So we had a government contract, and they had issues in Newcastle with the energy organization, and we had to bring people from overseas. So I had like 40 people working for me, paying me $10 an hour. So that was our margin when they worked. So I was making $16,000 a week way back in 96, 97.
Wow.
That was tons of money back then. So what I used to do is after dinner, my wife used to ask me to take the rubbish out and throw it. And what I used to do is take a walk, and whoever had a sign outside for sale, I'm talking about townhouses and villas, who were selling, and I used to knock on their door and say that, look, you're selling for 320. Out of that 320, about 20,000 will be paid to the real estate agent. Why don't you sell it to me for 300, and I'm ready to buy tomorrow? So every month I had like $60,000 coming in, or more. So I could afford to buy one townhouse or villa a month.
Right.
There was one stage where my wife told me that we had 14 or 15 of them, out of 300. So, almost 5% was owned by us. And this was the time before I knew super and before I knew commercial properties. So my wife stopped sending me out for garbage. She said, no, you're dangerous.
Every time you go for a walk, you come back with a house.
Yeah, with a house. So that's that's how bad it was. So when I found out that I'm not making any money, the key was just to utilize the income which I was generating. But then I realized that I'm borrowing 80%, and the rent was only $300 or thereabouts back then. There was no money coming in. Actually, I was losing money. And in year 2001, when the IT bubble burst, we had a situation where there was no money coming in, to finance all of these. I had to sell, and there's a problem. A lot of people don't sell, and if they don't sell, they can end up being bankrupt, and there are a lot of builders getting bankrupt because they don't tell you that why the builders are getting bankrupt. The reason they're getting bankrupt is they had a few speculative properties, their own specs going sour, and they could not afford them because the interest rate went up. So you have to sell. Learning to sell is the key. It's not only learning how to buy, it's when to sell. I had a very simple rule. If I don't have money for the next 1 year to afford it, I would sell once, make sure that I have enough money. And whenever I sold them, I was making money anyway and paying the tax on it.
Yep.
And I'm very happy to pay tax. Last year, my accountant in the office told me is more than $1 million. And that it gives me a lot of pride that I'm contributing as a citizen of this country, because the government is doing an excellent job. And I don't care whether it is the Labour or the Liberals, but they've got the police in check. All the roads get repaired in the suburb I live in. I call the ambulance and it comes, with one
We
call.
take a lot for granted, but that's not the reality for a lot of people on earth.
So my contribution is 1 million. Maybe my neighbor is contributing less, but I don't care. The more I'm able to contribute to taxes, the happier I am.
Mm.
And I don't even work them out. Now I have other professionals who tell me how much to pay and I just pay, you know.
Yep.
And that's how life is. And I enjoy paying tax. And tax cannot be 100%. Tax can be 25, 30, 35, around
Yep.
that. And you should be. So for me, if I earn 150, if I pay 35% tax or 30% tax, that's 50. I still get 100.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if my aim is to earn 100, I have to earn 150 because I have to worry about my partner in Canberra.
Yep.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
my. I take all the risk.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
that's the way I look at it.
Yep.
If you look at it that way, it's a bit easier. I take
Mm.
all the risk. They get 35%, and they let me live peacefully.
Mm.
You know.
So,
Uh,
so Manoj, if we consider someone, I mean, your situation is quite unusual to the point where you're able to go, once a month for a garbage walk and come
yeah.
back with a townhouse. But for someone that's let's say on 100 or 150K a year,
Yeah. Yeah.
obviously your advice is to maximize their super fund contributions above
Yeah.
what the sort of statutory rate that comes from their employer. At what stage are they able to, or does it make sense to purchase a property? And what should that kind of look like in terms of, resi or commercial, the
Yeah.
yield, and how do they get to the point where they are building property after property in that super fund? The Geared for Growth Property Investing podcast is presented by our business, MCG Quantity Surveyors. If you're an investor or a property professional looking to get the best tax depreciation deductions for yourself or your clients, please get in touch with us at mcgqs.com.au. It's our mission to help as many property investors as we can to maximise their claims and maximise their property education as well.
It's very easy. It's actually super easy. See, once you have that 9,000 a month, the maximum which can go into super is basically 30,000 per person. So
Mm-hmm.
you can contribute up to 60,000. And most of your listeners, if they check all their super funds, they probably already have 100,000 because they've been working, say, for 5 years. Yeah, for
Mm-hmm.
example, a husband, wife working for 5, 6 years, both of them together, they have 100. So if they
Mm-hmm.
change the way they pay their mortgages, what I'm suggesting is they stop paying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stop paying their mortgages. They have all that cash. They start sacrificing their salary into super. The first thing is it'll tax them only 15% instead of 34 or whatever percentage they are
Yep.
paying at the moment, the marginal tax rate. So once that money sits there, you have to look for properties, not which are going to grow, the properties which are going to give you 6%, 7%, 8%.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately, those things are not available in the cities. I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about the top 5 cities. So you have to go to the sixth city,
Yep.
seventh city, eighth cities. They're little shops selling for 300, 400,000, giving you 7% return.
Yep.
They may not grow. We don't want growth. What we want is income.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get income, you invest that income and earn income on income,
Mm-hmm.
right? So let's say there's a shop for 300, you already have 100, you contribute 60,000 this year, you will pay 15% tax, so you'll still have 85% of 60,000 still there. The
Mm-hmm.
rent will come in. So you're talking about paying off that in 2 or 3 years. Okay.
Yep.
So once that is paid out, then you again contribute 60,000 and then the second one and the third one. The problem with super is you can't use the equity of the first property and use it for the second property, even it might grow in value or even use that equity, right?
Mm.
So once it starts earning you money, you don't have to pay back that loan. You can start contributing into super and start looking for the second property.
Yep.
And then you may have a portfolio of, say, $3 million worth of property, giving you, by the time you finish, so let's say if your listener is 35, by the time 25 years, They may have $3 million worth of property, returning them say 7%. That's
Yep.
$210,000.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, if you have 3 million or if you have 30 million, there is no difference. They both are the same. Because in today's dollars, spending 210,000 tax free, which is 4,000 a week, is very difficult.
Mm.
Can you remember when you spent 4,000 a week if you were not on a holiday, just generally living? Have you
No.
spent 4,000 a week?
I don't think I ever have. The only time would be is if I bought like a big ticket item, but no, not
General
just
living,
not just
general living.
living or going
Yeah.
out to dinner or doing activities. No.
You can't. You can't. So that's
Mm.
obscene money. If you
Yeah.
have your house paid off and you have $3 million in super, I think that's heaps. Now that's 3 million within a couple. And
Yep.
there's new tax coming. The government also realizes that people in super have lots of money. Myself, I have 11 million in super.
Mm.
So my problem is basically to take that assets outside of super, because they're now going to tax unrealized gain in super. So
Right.
they're going to tax double, basically 30% tax. So
Right.
the idea is to take money out so that it's not in super, because you don't pay tax on unrealized gains. You only pay tax when you realize the gain.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
this is something, you get deeper. You got to read. Look, like I said, it's not a weekend thing. You got to take a day off.
Yeah.
Take a day off in your life. This is a job. This is something which you need to. Like me, I've read every book out there. Anybody writes a book, I go buy it.
Right.
Although I'm maybe qualified to write a book myself.
Yeah.
Because whenever anybody has an idea, they'll write something, and then I get a iota, maybe I get little thing. I'll give you an example. The other day I was reading a book, and it's he said that I stop whenever I see a old person outside the house,
Mm.
because maybe that person wants to sell the property.
Oh
you
yeah.
know
Yep. Yeah.
and then try to buy it cheaper than market value. And
Yep.
I said, well, I'm not going to do that, but that's an
Mm.
idea.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
some funny idea. So what I have been buying very recently is uh, outside of metropolitan, the top 5 cities.
Yep.
And for some reason I find Albury to be very attractive,
Hmm.
Albury Wodonga,
Yep.
because one day this country will have a fast train.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yep.
because train takes a very long time. Not flying is good, but you cannot have a flight at the moment. If you go to the airport, Sydney Melbourne is like one every half an hour.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
one day we will have a fast train where we will have more than 300 people traveling every hour, and we will be in Melbourne in 3 hours. You
Yep.
know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
what the time it takes by the time you drive to the airport, from airport to airport.
Yeah.
So they're going to stop at 2 3 different places, and I don't know anything about the plan, but maybe it doesn't happen in my lifetime, maybe it happens in my kids lifetime. But
Mm.
those properties, like it'll take you an hour to go to Melbourne, or
Yep.
an hour and a half to come to Martin Place in Sydney.
Yep.
Yeah. So those properties are going to double, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 15 years, or maybe in 20 years. There you can
Yep.
get 7% worth of property, not residential, but
Hmm.
commercial.
Yep.
So that's the area which I'm targeting. Wodonga is, the rental yields are much better. The vacancy rates are, well, Sydney almost has zero vacancy rates
Mm.
as far as residential is concerned. But,
Yeah.
there you got to wait 2 3 weeks, but you get a tenant,
Mm.
and the returns are much, much better. Here you buy a house in Castle Hill for 2 million, you get $1,000, which is 50,000 a week. You're
Mm.
talking about 2% returns. So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
way. So even if it grows from 2 million to whatever, I still have to pay the bank for a stranger to live in my house.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that's a
I'm
that's an
not going to
interesting
do
way to
that.
look at it. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, look, it cost 100,000, 7%. So for 2 million, it cost $140,000 to live in that house.
Yeah.
So the tenant pays only 50, or say 60, or even
Mm.
70. So I have to pay 70,000 to the bank for a total stranger who I've never even met.
Mm.
I'm funding him living in Castle Hill. Why would I
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah. Yeah. On
Uh,
on the promise of potential growth, but no guarantee.
Look, okay, even 7% property grow. So
Yeah.
2% property growth, even 7% grow.
Mm.
So I mean, I bought a property in Harris Park. I paid 420,000. By the way, whenever I buy a property, I don't just buy with what its current yield is.
Hmm.
I always buy a property where there is a twist,
Right.
that I can improve it. I can put a one level up, or I
Yep.
can change it. Like I'm looking at a pub at the moment. I won't tell you where,
Sure.
but
Until
they
you
have,
buy it.
yeah, there's 6,000 square meters of land.
Hmm.
Yeah, and they have a strip 20 meters by 90 meters, a
Hmm.
strip of land behind the pub.
Right.
So we are putting. I'm talking to the council of putting 20 rooms there
Hmm.
as a lodge, as
Yep.
a motor lodge, and that land is free to me,
Mm.
because I'm getting the 7% income from the pub.
Yep.
So I get that land for free. All I have to do is pay for costs to build it, and once I build it, the return can be more than 7%, because I
Yes.
will be renting it out to someone who runs a lodge,
Mm.
a motel or some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your growths, I mean, the property which I bought in Harris Park is one on the main street. Also, I would say that some people who have done well will tell you that they have a crystal ball,
Right.
but it's actually not a crystal ball. It is their capacity to take a risk,
Yes.
and it's not a risk; it's a calculated risk,
Yes.
and that calculated risk is inherent. It's in your blood. And what happens is that once you hit a dart in dark, and it hits the bullseye, and you do it 2 3 times,
Mm.
you start believing in yourself that you're very good at it,
Yeah.
and you keep on taking more risk,
Yep.
and you think that you're an expert, I mean, and if you continue to do that, it's possible that at one stage you could be very very rich. But then there are unlucky people, who throw a dart and you can't even find the dart.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And you've lost everything. So you have to be very calculated, and that's where the experience comes. That's where the support team comes, your mortgage brokers, your accountants, your full support team. Like me, I haven't even bought this property. I've already spoken to a builder, I've already spoken to the council, I've spoken to a tenant who may rent that motel from me.
Right.
Not one, 5 or 6 of them. I phone every motel.
Yeah.
I
Right.
can't do it while I'm at my employer's place. I have to be at home to do that.
Yeah.
So I say,
True.
what is the need? Will you rent it from me if I build it for you? You know
Yep.
what I mean? So let's
Yeah.
get it.
Absolutely.
So before I start building, I'll have a rental agreement in place.
Yeah, wow. So that's
Yeah.
that's your upside. So Manoj, there's still a lot to unpack here, I suppose, but we're pretty much out of time. But
Yeah.
if I can summarize your points, one is to minimize whatever you are paying to the bank, either by making sure you're not paying off the principal, but ideally using that line of credit and having a return so that you're kind of whittling that down to pay the interest only, but making the extra contributions to super. That's probably the first sort of starting
Uh,
point, would you say?
no, 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 no. When I bought my house, it costed me $2.5 million in
Hmm.
Glenhaven, and it broke the record, the suburb record. But I borrowed 1.8, so I had equity of 700.
Hmm.
That 1.8 million has become over 12 years about 2.8 million.
Hmm.
So that loan of 1.8, but the value has gone up to 5.
Yep.
So 2.8 to 5, my equity of 700 has become bigger.
Yes. Yep.
And you will say lucky because the house prices went up. But I didn't pay the bank anything because I
Yep.
took a $1 million. Every 3 years, I go take a loan. And from that second loan, third loan, I pay off the first loan.
Right.
So it's called capitalizing your loans. It's a
Yep.
very simple method, but most people do it with their investment property, and they use the rent to pay off their home loan. And there's a
Mm.
famous case, Hart's case, that it allows them to do that.
Yep.
So the rent goes to pay off your home loan, whereas the investment property loan keeps on going up in value. So
Yep.
I'm not talking about investment property, I'm talking about your own home.
Yes. Yep.
But the problem is, a lot of people will be too scared to do it. And I'm telling you, that is your way to richness.
Mm. Yep.
Like I was talking about my staff member, I was asking him to do it, but he wouldn't do it. I've been telling
Right.
him to do it for last 2 years. It's very
Right.
scary to
Yes.
let your home loan keep on going up.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I guess we've just kind of been taught that you don't borrow for things if you don't have the money, and unless it's a house. That's the old mindset, and then it's a race to pay it off as quick as you can. But
See,
your basic
your parents will tell you to do it. Your
yes, yeah.
colleagues at work will tell you to do it.
Mm,
One day at work, I saw a St. George ad in a newspaper that instead of paying monthly, pay fortnightly. Okay.
right.
And this way you'll reduce 6 7 years of your loan. I mean, you
Mm,
must have seen those ads.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Fortnightly in advance versus
Yeah.
arrears, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. Okay.
fortnightly rather than weekly.
Now tell me something. If you pay for 7 years less, who wins? You win, not the
Yeah,
bank. Not the
yeah,
bank. Okay.
yeah.
The bank doesn't win because they earn less interest over the
Yes.
life of the loan, right?
Yep.
So why would they pay $25,000 to put a half a page ad in the newspaper?
That is a good question.
Yeah, I'll tell you why.
Mm.
They own your house because it's on the title, it's their
Yes.
name.
Yep.
They basically, you can't do anything, you can't sell it
Mhm.
without their permission. Okay.
Yep.
So they own their house, they've given you money, they want it back so that they can give it to other people.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is a margin which the Reserve Bank wants them to keep. So for it's 1:24. So if they had $1 in deposits, they could borrow another 24 and lend 25.
Right.
So they want their money back. They
Yep.
encourage you to pay the money back. They already own your house anyway.
Mm. Yeah.
So you must look at it. What benefit are they getting for you to pay that ad? And they are telling you to do it. So there must
Yeah.
be a scheme.
Yeah. That's interesting. I guess they understand that it's more valuable for that to come back onto their balance sheet because they can 24 exit out in other products, which maybe are higher rates of interest than you would have been paying anyway.
Look, they want their money back so that they can start making more money with that money. And why would I let them do that?
Yeah.
Because I
Exactly.
want my money to stay with me.
Yep.
Why would I give my money to someone else to live in a house
Exactly. So
when
once
I
we've
can?
all
Mhm.
So once we've organised the home loan, then it's a matter of dedicating the time to educate yourself, because I guess we kind of think, well, we work for the money and that's our income. But you're kind of saying, well, the money needs to be money needs to be utilized in the most efficient way, and to do that, you need to educate yourself. And if you are investing, if you are purchasing property in your super fund, you need to dedicate time to be able to execute on that and make the right decisions.
Well, these are some of the pointers, but you must understand that it has to clap.
Hmm.
Then it makes a noise, right?
Right.
You cannot just sit there and be rich, right?
Mm.
Like this, what I said: read lots of books, talk a lot of people, and don't think that this is a sidekick investment
Mm.
property. It's not,
Yep.
and can never be, because you'll end up in negative gearing.
Mm.
And that's the worst thing. That's the worst place to be.
Yep.
And you can talk to other people. You can talk to your friends who are knowledgeable, not just anybody who's done property deal. And in the olden days, they used to fly you to Brisbane or to Queensland,
Yeah, yeah.
pick you up from the airport, show you a property, and sell you that property. Don't fall for all that crap.
Mm,
And there are a lot of property speakers out there. What you
yes.
need to do is do your homework, right? And you need to clap. You need to make a noise. You need to make yourself felt, right? Only then, and you don't have to do too much. 3 million is enough. Your
Yep.
own house and 3 million, that's enough.
Yeah.
You don't need 5 million, you don't need 10 million. I was listening to one of your guests, they're talking about subdivisions, and they're going to make tons and tons of money. What are you going to do with that money?
Yeah. Yeah.
You told me you can't spend more than 4,000 a week.
No. And I've tried. I've tried fairly hard, but
When I
that's
was
beyond me.
when I was in practice, I had a client. It's a very interesting story. I'm sorry I'm taking this time, but
No, that's okay.
yeah, this lady would come to the office with the husband, and their minimum pension withdrawal was 300,000. They had to spend 6,000 a week.
Right.
They had to you see what happens with pension. There's a minimum amount which you need to withdraw. So for
Yep.
them it was 6,000 a week, 300,000 a year.
Yep.
So I told this lady, I said, every time you come here, you putting on the same shoes, when
Mm.
you come to my office. You're not allowed in my office till you come in a shoe which is worth $1,000.
Right. Right.
So every 3 months they used to come and talk to me. So the next time she came in, I said, you sit in the car.
Right.
You're not allowed to come and talk to me till.
Yeah.
And then she started to take out something from her bag, and it was a receipt. And she said, Manoj, I tried. I went everywhere. I went
Mm.
to Myers in the city. The maximum I could do. Look at my shoes. It's $800, the
Right.
maximum.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you see, all our life, we learn how to save money.
Mm.
Nobody teaches us how to. Our parents save money, delayed gratification.
Yes.
That's pure African bullshit. African bullshit. Save money.
Mm.
That's wrong. You're supposed to enjoy your life, because when you're 60, your enjoyment diminishes. So
Right.
delayed gratification is the worst thing you can ever do.
Well, that is certainly flying in the face of a lot of conventional wisdom,
I
but
know.
we got
I
you on
know.
here to tackle these big issues, Manoj, but we're going to have to get you back another
Yeah,
time.
sure.
Thank you very
Sure.
much for
Thank you.
sharing all of that wisdom today. There's a lot to think about, a lot of takeaways, but we'd love to check back in with you down the track and see how you're going at spending your $4,000 a week.
I'll get you to that stage if you let me tell you what to do. Anyway, I enjoyed it thoroughly. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you very much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Cheers.